Hi, I'm Scott Simpson.
And I'm Charla Stever.
And we are Thai learning specialists. And we're going to talk a little bit today about two things, actually, that I really love and how they come together. The Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings, written by indigenous elders here in South Dakota, and how they connect, or how they may connect in, with language arts at all different kinds of levels. So we're going to start out by heading over to the website, which is wolakotaproject.org. And we're going to show you where you can get the document for the Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings, and where all the resources that we'll be kind of familiarizing you with, where they're all at today. We should tell them who we are, though.
We should.
Yeah.
Yeah, who are
start.
you? Oh, I'll start. Like I said, I'm Charla Stever, and I've been here at Thai I'm starting my 9th year. My background in education was elementary education. I taught in the elementary classroom for about 12 years total. And I, here at Thai, have done a lot of work around this particular work that we're going to share with you today with the Wolakota Project. We tend to do work related to culturally responsive practices. We have done quite a few trainings around language arts and writing. That is another area that we actually focus on a lot. And a variety of other things that sort of relate to social emotional learning. That's sort of where we tend to be.
That's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So, and part of the reason, as you said, we like to do some language arts stuff. That was my background. So I taught high school and middle school for full-time for about 6 years, English, speech, and theater, and then taught at the college level full-time for 10 years. Doing the same sorts of things, directing theater, teaching English classes, but also working with teachers in teacher training, particularly in language arts. And then for the last 12 years have been here at Thai, and for 8 of those, working with Charla on essential understandings and those cultural things and those other things that she mentioned already. So we're excited to get into this. We're not going to take a whole lot of time, so we're really going to give you a broad overview of what the essential understandings are and what resources there are that you can connect in specifically for things having to do with speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And then we'll leave it to you. If you're a classroom specialist in language arts, then you'll be familiar with all of the standards that you're working with. And so we'll leave that to you to be able to make those connections. But we're going to make some broad, maybe high-level connections for you.
I would say this is like a 30,000-foot view of what there's so much that we need to share, but we need this to be like a half hour. So we're going to give you that high level view and also show you where you can learn more.
And if you want more, we can also make a 3-day long training. Mm-hmm. That would be a lot.
That would be.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right.
So we're going to go straight to the website. As I said earlier, the website is wolakotaproject.org, and that's the word Lakota with W-O in front of it, .org. And when you come to the website, this is what you'll see on this main page.
And Scott, I think it's important for people to know even what that word means. The word Wolakota, this word has sort of captured the work that has been done in this area with the essential understandings over the last few years. And that word Wolakota means peace and coming together, or forming a pact, or working together. And so we feel like that's a very appropriate word to describe all of this work that we're doing.
And I think it's really important too. I've just been thinking about that word and even current events that are going on, and how in our culture we're struggling with how do we come together in a good way. And I think this word Wolakota and a lot of the things that these elders are sharing really drive right at the heart of that. So
I agree.
Anyway, we're going to begin under this tab up here that says OSCU Introduction. OSCU is kind of shorthand for Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings. And when you click on that, what you'll find underneath that is a number of things. On this page, we've got some video interviews with a couple of folks. But what we're going to go straight to is right here where the link to the document, the Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings document, the revised version that was done in 2016. Now, the original version that was completed in 2012 is linked right below that. But we're going to go to this revised edition, and we're going to take a look at that document, and we're going to use this to kind of as a guide to look at just a real brief overview of the history of this project, and then the 7 essential understandings themselves.
And Scott, some people, I think even today, aren't always aware of this document and of this work that has happened in our state, even though it's been around since 2012. And one of the things I feel like is really important to bring out as we talk about this, as we begin to look at it, is how understandings, essential understandings, are different than standards. So as language arts teachers, you have a set of standards that you need to teach for each grade level that you work with or each content area. These are different. Essential understandings are different in that they are something that you will never fully check off as accomplishing or mastering. And so when we think of an essential understanding, there's different levels of depth of understanding around it. So I don't even know that we have ever met an elder who would say they have mastered these essential understandings, because they are 7 areas of Lakota, Dakota, Nakota culture that people feel are some of the most important things about who they are. And so as people work with these, they deepen their understanding, but never actually get to the point where you say, okay, in 5th grade, we're going to completely master this understanding. So,
which I think is one of the reasons why it lends itself so well to language arts.
Yes.
I think language arts, in any skill that we want to talk about in language arts, whether it has to do with writing or reading or speaking or listening, all of them have that same deepening nature to them. Just because I'm a great writer at one stage doesn't mean I don't have room to improve and to expand those skills and to expand my capacity with language. So I think what we're going to try to do is give you as many inroads into, first of all, understanding for yourself what these understandings are, and then finding ways to connect them in with what it is you teach in language arts.
So this document, as you scroll through it, and it's a really beautiful document that I would encourage you to print off in color and keep by your desk when you're doing your planning or whatever. It has a lot of wonderful words of wisdom in it and beautiful pictures, and it also shows some of the history as we dig into how did this come about. So go ahead. If maybe Scott can share a little bit about the history.
The work on this began in 2008, and elders from all 9 nations, 9 reservations in the state of South Dakota came together. It was a very large work group at the beginning, and talked at a very high level, and they made some trips to Washington, D.C., and a number of things, and worked over a number of years to really clarify what they wanted to do. One of the things they also did is they looked at the essential understandings that had already been written in Montana. Montana at that time already had some essential understandings written by their elders. And so they looked at some of those as well.
I really appreciate that quote by Dottie LeBeau, too. We've used that a lot in our work. Open yourself to another worldview will assist you in understanding of what occurs both in and outside of Native communities. Just that whole idea of making sure that we're providing multiple perspectives in our instruction with our students in our state, it's really, really important. And Dottie, who is a longtime educator in our state and elder, she really brought that home, I felt like, with that quote.
So over several years, up through 2012, this team worked, and the team shifted and changed a little bit. It grew a little bit smaller as some folks got involved with other things. By 2012, they were really making some final revisions, including some tables of great information that are still in even the revised version. And that's around the time when we became involved. The elders invited us. They said, we've got this wonderful document, these 7 essential understandings, but we know that it's going to be difficult to get to help teachers really know how to use them. And so that's really where the Wolakota project began. And that's why the word Wolakota became a huge part of it, because really we were coming together to work together and find something that would work and make this fly in classrooms, in schools, all grade levels, all content areas in South Dakota. And so we began by video interviewing those elders who had been authors of the Essential Understandings, and then that's expanded well beyond those elders to other elders across our state. And we'll show you where all of those interviews are. Those are a huge resource, I think, for a lot of the ways that you might begin to use these Essential Understandings.
So you can see names of teachers that have worked and elders who have worked on these Essential Understandings over the years, done those revisions, and created updates for us to make them even easier to use in our classrooms.
So what we'd like to really do is get into this page. This is on page 3, and there's a lot. There's 36 pages to this document, and a lot of great information, a lot of extended, expanded, longer versions of additional information on each of the understandings, some standards that have been written that connect with them. But what we're really going to focus on for this purpose is really just the wording of these essential understandings. And on this page, at a glance, on one page, you can have all of those understandings together.
Now, Scott and I will be going through these a little bit more deeply here in just a few minutes, but I think we'll just give you the topics right now so that you have a sense of what the OSCU incorporate. So as we look through these, we'll just kind of bounce back and forth, just sharing those high-level topics. So OSCU number 1 deals with our lands and environment.
OSCU number 2 deals with identity and resiliency.
OSCU 3 is about culture and language.
OSCU 4 deals with kinship and harmony.
OSCU 5 is oral tradition and story.
OSCU 6, sovereignty and treaties.
And the last one, OSCU 7, is about way of life and development.
So before we leave this document, you now know kind of the categories that these fall in. Before we leave this document, we'll just mention that the rest of the document has, like this is the section for OSCU number 1, lands and environment. You'll see all the standards that were written during that revision time. You'll have an extended description there. There's a song written and recorded that you can on most of the songs you'll be able to listen to the recordings from the website, which is a great thing to do for language arts. It has the Lakota words because it's sung in Lakota, and then the translation into English, and then there are lots of photographs that go along with that. And there are tables and additional resources near the end of the document that you may find really helpful as well.
So if you haven't had a chance to really dig into this, we would really strongly suggest just print off a copy for yourself and go through and really read through it and discover some of these important things that can be incorporated into your classroom, any classroom, really. Right. No matter the content that you teach.
And once again, just so you know where that was found, you just click on OSCU Introduction and it will take you to this page, and the link is right there. If we're gonna go back up and show you a couple of there are a number of things that we've developed over the last several years, but we're going to show you one that I think may be especially helpful to you in language arts. I'm gonna hover over OSCU Introduction, but I'm gonna come down here to this link that says Thematic OSCU Conversations Activity. And the reason we want to take a look at this, we developed this in part because South Dakota Public Radio was working on a number of things, and public broadcasting was working on some things, and they wanted to do a series of animated shorts, and they wanted themes, key themes that went with each of the understandings. We first developed it with that, and then Charla went out with one of the elders that we work with, Dwayne Hollowhorn Bear, and did some overviews with teachers in our state using this, and it's a really good way of introducing some of the key themes that go with each of these, and then engaging in conversations, writing, everything that has to do with the language arts, the things that we do, speaking, listening, reading, writing, viewing, right, all those kinds of activities. So on this page, what you have right here is the link to download this as a PDF, which is what I would encourage you to do. This Prezi, we'll go ahead and use this as we move through the document. What the Prezi is, it just moves us through the document itself that you can download. But we'll use this to kind of talk through a couple of these themes so that you can begin to develop some ideas of how they might connect in with what you already teach.
As we go through these, you're going to see immediately connections to your language arts content standards as well as social sciences. Those are going to be very obvious to you. And we would strongly encourage you to use this as it is, as a lesson. This might be a wonderful way for you to bring this out into your classroom. Or even if you're teaching virtually, this would be a great thing to share with students, to have them do some learning and research around the OSEU as well as the people of the Oceti Sakowin.
And there are links in this document that will take you directly to our YouTube channel and directly to interviews with elders. And that's one way you can access those interviews. But probably the best way, and we're going to show you this in a little bit, to access those would be through the website, because the website, the pages that these interviews are housed on, also contains some resources that you'll want to use, some questions that will be especially useful for journaling or conversation or writing or some things like that. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But on this particular document, we'll start out here at the beginning, and we wanted to do first kind of an introduction. Oceti Sakowin. A lot of folks say, what does that mean? I mean, I've heard the name Sioux. I've heard the name Lakota and Dakota and Nakota. Well, the Oceti Sakowin people are the people of the 7 council fires, and that's all of those folks together. They have a related language group. They are relatives. They speak a common language, 3 different dialects of that. But taking their history back through oral tradition, they are the 7 council places, or council fires, or 7 fireplaces. And there are a couple of links there, one in the document that we just talked about, the OSEU, but also a really nice South Dakota Public Broadcasting video that talks about the people of the 7 fireplaces.
So as we go through these, this by no way is all-inclusive of concepts that need to be covered, but these are some key themes, and that's really what this whole lesson that was developed, or this whole presentation that was developed, was for, is to begin talking about all of this within the concept of themes. Right. And so in OSEU number 1, there were 2 themes that we thought were really important to bring about, that are sort of fundamental to knowing a little bit about how the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people feel about lands and environment from what the elders have shared. One of them was around reservations. The other was around land stewardship, and the idea of land stewardship versus ownership, which is very different. And so when you go through this, there are some sort of sub-points that you can talk about that are really important key bits of information. And then there are also some links at the bottom where you can go through and listen to some elders talk about this, because our expertise is in the area of learning and in the area of helping create environments for learning. And so we always try to point people to where the expertise is around culture, which is they are the elders.
Right.
And so these are all videos of elders speaking about those particular essential understandings.
So I feel like if you're doing any thematic work around something that has to do with the environment, with the land around us, any reading or writing that connects deeply with that, then a lot of these video interviews would be good, and a lot of these ideas coming from the indigenous people of our state would help you make some really wonderful connections with that for writing or for additional reading or for viewing and conversations. So number 2 deals with identity and resiliency. And 2 of the key themes that we pulled out of this are, what are origin stories? How do people get their identity from their origin stories? And that has a lot of implications for us in language arts. If you're looking at origin stories coming from various cultures, this is a really good place to tap into that, and how the stories that we tell each other and that we tell ourselves about who we are and where we've come from, how that shapes our identity and shapes everything that we do, shapes our culture. The other piece of this that we pulled out was the theme of the medicine wheel, which really is that Oceti Sakowin philosophy of life, of living a balanced life, of how do I balance what I'm doing? How do I stay in balance with myself, with my community, with the world around me? And there's a lot of rich stuff around the medicine wheel, a number of elders talking about that. And the health, the social health, the mental health that comes with that. And so if you're doing any reading, writing, conversations around that sort of thing, that would be a great connection to make.
And you'll notice in here, actually right before we get to OSU 3, if you were doing this with your students, or you're planning to do this maybe with a small group of teachers, there are discussion questions there that will guide you through that if you're kind of working your way through the essential understandings. And we'd really encourage you to do that. That's really where the learning happens.
You know, that's one of the things that we use, even though we're not ostensibly teaching language arts. I think we almost without exception utilize that social engagement, that discussion, that getting in a circle and talking is an incredibly important piece of this. That way of being with each other,
yes.
And that way of respecting each other and listening, developing those deep listening skills, really incredibly important, and connects well with language arts standards.
Yes. So moving on then to the essential understanding number 3 around culture and language, a couple of the themes that we felt were really important around that one are the language. What are the languages of the Oceti Sakowin people? So as we think about Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, being aware of the differences, the similarities, how they're related, as well as songs and dance. In OSU 3, that's another big thing that comes out. And like Scott said earlier, there is a song for each of the essential understandings that you can go in and share with your students and watch Earl Bullhead perform. But bringing out that artistic side, I guess, of the culture is really a beautiful way of doing that. So that's OSU 3. A
lot of great opportunity for some creative writing in that, in connection with songs or creating songs and some things like that. Number 4, kinship and harmony, some of the themes that we pulled out. What does kinship mean? And of course, kinship looks different in different cultures, but kinship is how are we related to each other? Who are my relatives? How do I interact with them? How do we define what's appropriate for interaction with various people that I'm related to or not related to, and all of those things. So if you're doing anything with family, with connections like that, this would be a great essential understanding to tap into to make those connections. And then a really, maybe the most important theme in all of these essential understandings is the theme of mitakuye oyasin. And you may have heard that term before. And it means all my relatives. But it's not just about relatives. It's really about how are we interconnected with each other. And not just with each other as human beings, but also with everything around us. The idea of mitakuye oyasin is that I am a relative, an interconnected relative with everything around me, with the birds, the animals, the plants, the rocks, the earth itself. And what responsibilities do I have in connection with all the things, all the family, all the relatives around me, given the fact that I see them as relatives, not just as other. It could be a fairly heavy philosophical kind of approach, but I think when you're looking at a number of pieces of literature that talk about how we interact with one another, how we sometimes other those who are different from us, and how we move away from that, how we move toward better engagement with one another and taking care of one another, then this would have a lot of great connections to make thematically.
And when we get into OSU 5 around oral tradition and story, there were a couple themes that came out. Storytelling is so important.
Yeah, huge.
And one of the areas, Iktomi stories, that's an area that we feel like we've got a lot of things to support that, for you to bring that out in your classroom. We have an elder, which we'll show you this in a little bit, but an elder who actually did a whole series of Iktomi stories to include on the website that are told both in English and Lakota, and they're beautiful. And so that idea of storytelling, and specifically one theme would be Iktomi stories, which are trickster stories, and they are stories meant for teaching ways of life and good choices and bad choices, or how do you figure out what you're supposed to do in life. And as you get older, those stories sort of grow with you. And that's one of the messages that several elders have shared, is that they aren't sort of tied up neatly with a bow, with a happily ever after kind of story. They're a different kind of story, where you may listen to it when you're 5, and it may have just as much meaning, but in a different way when you're 55. So.
And of course, Iktomi is unique to the Oceti Sakowin people, but those trickster stories are in every culture, every tradition. And if you're doing anything with that at all in literature, then this is a really great connection.
Yeah. And so the other theme that we thought was important to bring out is that of the winter count, which is really how the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota people keep their history. And there are some wonderful videos there that will help you to use that in your classroom. You might think about ways that you would draw that out, especially during the winter time, when storytelling is most prevalent. And so we would encourage you to take a look at these and see how you might incorporate that into your classroom.
And this is a great one to connect with verbal communication when it's combined with visual, and how those things work together to get an idea or a message or something important across. Because that's literally what the winter count was. It was the storytelling around that visual image. So, and once again, some discussion questions that go with that series of understandings. So when we get to number 6, sovereignty and treaties, the first key theme is, how do we get along? Of course, this understanding deals with a lot of the treaties that were made between the U.S. and indigenous nations, and of course, there's a huge history there of treaties kept and treaties not kept, and how even as we attempt to make agreements and to get along, quite often things get in the way. Selfishness, other agendas, and things like that. And so there's a long history of that. Thematically, that may connect in with some of the other literature that you're reading, some of the ideas about how people work out deals with each other, how people work out coexisting peacefully, and how that sometimes does not work out. The next theme that's still under number 6 is about the boarding schools, which is an incredibly important part of our history here. If you know about the U.S. policies that utilized boarding schools for specifically for assimilating indigenous young people, it's a difficult and dark and really horrific in many ways history, but an important one for us to remember and to realize, because it has so many implications for how we engage and interact today. I want to especially highlight this particular series of videos. It is from Sidney Bird, who has since passed. He was from Flandreau. He was Dakota, and he tells the story of his being put on the train to go to boarding school, and the story of that, and as a child, age 6, I believe, going off away, being taken away from his family and sent off to boarding school, and finding the support that he needed while he was there from others, and the incredible lessons that he's drawn out of that. That whole story is just an amazing story. If you don't know much about the boarding schools or about the personal stories that are connected with that, that would be a wonderful unit to build around for your students.
And hearing the impact on someone who was 6 years old at the time, and we interviewed him when he was about 97. And so 90 years later, seeing and hearing the incredible impact that had on his life was really powerful. So the last one, OSU 7, there are 2 themes we brought out in that one as well. One of them is, what is the Wo'ope Sakowin? And one of our colleagues, Tamara Miyasato, actually does a great deal of training around this, and this was developed with an elder that she worked with from Pine Ridge. And so I'd encourage you to do a little looking on our website if you would like to begin to learn about them. There are posters you can print off that list these, and a little bit of information about each one with beautiful pictures.
Yeah.
And then if this is something that you would like to see brought out in your school or district, having Tamara come and talk about that would be a great thing to do.
It has great connections with character education, with really looking at virtues, what we value as human beings, and how we engage with one another.
Yep.
So,
and then the other one under 7 is the people today. And one of the things I think is very important for us to bring out as educators is that this is not just history. There is a lot for history. There is a lot of important history that we need to teach, but it's current as well. The people of the Oceti Sakowin are alive and well and thriving here in South Dakota, and sometimes it gets relegated to that place of the past. And so making sure that our students today know that this is still ongoing. These people have been here since time immemorial. It's and so it's really important for us to make sure that our students and our new generations know the impact that these wonderful people have had on our society.
if you're doing any work with like film studies, quite often the stereotypes that are perpetuated in film or in literature as well, then this would be a really good one to tap into, because this really deals with how the people who are the Oceti Sakowin, how they deal with those stereotypes that have been perpetuated through our literature, through our film, and through all of those things, and how that impacts them today. So that's we wanted to make sure we showed you that, because we felt like this was a really particularly good resource that might be useful to you as language arts teachers. What we'd like to do real quickly is to highlight one. We've talked a little bit about Dwayne Hollowhorn-Bear. Do you want to mention just a little bit of this? I'll click on this particular link. That is where all of Dwayne's stories are housed.
Yes, and as you go through these, these are just wonderful. Dwayne shares a story, like I said earlier, in both English and Lakota. And so you can go through and listen to both. It brings the language alive and into your classrooms. They're wonderful teaching stories as well. So we'd really encourage you to dive deeply into that, especially in the area of language arts. When we think about storytelling, there's so much about how Dwayne tells stories that is something that can teach us as well.
He's such a wonderful storyteller.
And then the other thing we wanted to make sure, there are so many things on this website. There's so many resources, hundreds of lessons that you can find in here, films and programs. But we want to make sure, lastly, in our little bit of time we have left, that we share where the real beauty and treasure of this website is, and that's the interviews with our elders in our state. And
if you notice on this list, we've got links to each page. Each of these pages has the interviews, links to the pages with the interviews of the elders that we've aligned with those specific essential understandings. And so that's probably the best place to go if you're wanting to look for elder interviews, and that will have the questions that we're going to show you right there on the page.
So we're going to take a look at one in particular. Stephanie Charging Eagle has a variety. You'll see lots of different videos of Stephanie. She has so much wonderful wisdom to share. But in this example, she talks about how to make the circle strong. And it's a wonderful video. And one of the things we wanted to make sure you knew about that has been done for you, and we find this especially helpful for writing and also just in communication, are the questions that are available with each video. So as you go in to look at a video, as you finish it, there are 2 sets of questions for every video. One we call Learn About questions. One we call Learn From questions. The Learn About can also easily be used in writing. It works well for things like reports and doing research, and they are informational-based questions, things you might consider Googling or learning more about, or maybe talking to another elder about. The Learn From questions are questions that we hope help the learner make a personal connection to what the elder has shared.
These are the questions that, for me, if I was using these to have students listen to Stephanie and then do some journaling, personal journaling, that might then lead into a conversation, a circle discussion, some things like that. Also in creative writing, lots and lots of ideas can come from sitting and listening attentively to an elder who is coming from a different background maybe than my own, or an elder that I don't know that's coming from my own background, to be able to help me tap into some of my own creative ideas and connections.
So one of the ways that some teachers start using this website is by having students go in, choose, or maybe the teacher chooses the video, student might choose it as well, and watch the video, listen for a bit to what that elder had to say, then choose one of those Learn From questions and journal about it. And it's something that's ready to go. It's done for you. I think it's a great way to bring writing into your classroom, or to have really wonderful discussions. When we think about listening, viewing, writing, reading, all of those, speaking, so much of that can be accomplished with one video. And so we'd really encourage you to think about that for your classrooms and know that it's already ready for you.
So let's real quickly listen to Stephanie, and then we'll just take a look at these Learn From questions, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
We are all individuals in the circle, but as individuals, we have the responsibility to carry on the teachings, to do what needs to be done to continue to make that circle strong. And that is what I think Oceti Sakowin is, and that as an adult who has the who can speak the language, who has some knowledge of the teachings, it is my responsibility as an individual to share that, so the circle becomes stronger. And I believe that is what that essential understanding is. We are the same as anybody else. We do have rights, as all South Dakota citizens do. We do have the same, needs, desires, and some are different because culturally we are diverse. But that my prayer is that as an educator, as a member of the Oceti Sakowin, that someday that we will all have the understanding of each other. Not just that they understand us, but that we also understand our neighbors within this state of South Dakota.
Such a great statement about why these understandings are important in themselves.
So when you think about what Stephanie just shared, and then you look at this list of Learn From questions, you can see how this really invites the learner to make a personal connection. Like number 1, what community or communities am I a part of that I feel responsibility for? What are my responsibilities to my communities? And do I carry through with my individual commitments to my communities? I think just that one question, especially at the middle school, high school level, could be so powerful with students as they think through, who are my communities? It's important to know where we're connected, where we're members, and how do we support it? You know, she talks about each person doing what they do best to make the circle strong, that they each are important to that circle. And I think that's such a wonderful message for young people especially.
One of the things that I'll mention that I think is so important and really is the reason why we have a set of 5 questions here, the idea of these being invitational. One of the, I think, important things, especially if you're wanting to use these for writing or for stimulating thinking, for conversation, I think giving students choice is incredibly important. That first one may really draw me in as a student. Then again, that may not be where I'm at. I may have something else that I need. And so I've got 5 choices up here. And if you present it in that way and say, hey, find one of these that you really connect with, take that one and run with it. Then you've got even that much more diversity within the classroom because you've got different students who are dealing with different invitational questions. That makes the writing, the conversation that much richer.
Yes. Yeah. So there is so much more, and we are at the end of our time that we have to share with you today. But we hope that what this did is gave you some high-level overview and awareness of some things that are available for you as a teacher in the state, and that you'll consider thinking about using it and digging in a little deeper and seeing how this might intersect with the things that you currently teach. So we really encourage you to look further into everything that we've shared today, as this, like I said, we have taken 3 days before to present just this one idea, this one set of resources, and there is much, much more for you.
I think the best connections that you'll make when you get what you are planning to teach in mind, the key things that you're going to be addressing, maybe the readings that you've already got, maybe some of the assignments that you traditionally have done to get at certain skills, and then sit down with those in mind and listen to a few of these elders. Read through some of the essential understandings. The connections will come, and then you'll be able to build something that's rich and that connects in with the indigenous people, the indigenous culture, the indigenous language, the indigenous parts of this wonderful state that we live in, which is just something we don't do enough of. We study a lot about a lot of places that are far, far away and sometimes aren't as good at making the connections with right here with who we are. So
thank you for your time and attention and for spending this little bit of space with us. And we hope that it was helpful to you. We hope that it inspired you in some way to go back and maybe try some of this with your students and see how it goes. I think you'll find that it'll be rich, wonderful sharing.
There'll be some links in the credits. If you want to email us or if you want to go to the website, the links will be there in the credits. So you can check those out. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks.
Thank you.